It's 1997 Chevy Tahoe. We've determined the fuel pump is faulty in this particular vehicle. Before we begin the repair, we'll now disconnect the negative battery cable. We need to bleed the pressure off the system. Always be sure and capture any fuel that you bleed off into a safe container. Now we will raise the vehicle in order to gain access to the fuel tank. Now that we've got it raised and secured, we'll undo the fuel filler hose. There is two lines that actually hook to the tank that come from the filler neck. And there's actually the line coming directly from the filler neck, and the other is a vent line. On this particular vehicle, you can't access the fuel lines until you've lowered the tank partially. At the front of the vehicle is an emissions line that has a quick connect. It doesn't require a special tool, it's just a pinch type retainer. Then at the fuel pump itself, there's a pressure line and then a return line. The pressure line on this particular one is 3/8 and the return line is 5/16. And it does require two separate style of tool. You want to be sure and get the outside of the tank clean to keep any debris from possibly falling into the tank that you have to clean out later. You want to be sure and use a brass or non-ferrous punch so that we don't create any sparks, because we are working with fuel in an open air atmosphere. Because it's a module type assembly, you've got a plastic can that's going to have fuel in it. When you remove the pump out of the tank, you need to be sure and try to capture as much of that fuel as possible and keep it safely away from any ignition sources. At this point, we need to drain the remaining fuel into a safe container and then clean the inside of the tank. We want to be sure that the tank is as clean as possible to allow a clean environment for the fuel pump. Once you get the new pump, and the float arm will be in with the pump, taped to the module assembly. You remove the tape. Also on the float arm is a protective red cap that you'll remove. You'll install it into the sending unit itself. You'll actually physically feel it and hear it snap into location. On the top of the tank there's a notch where the pump actually sets. Also there is a locating tab on the bottom of the pump flange. They have to match up so you get the pump oriented in the tank properly for the fuel lines to connect. About halfway in the tank, you place your sealing ring in its groove. Take your locking ring, move it into position, and you start the locking ring underneath its retainer clips. We need to make sure that the locking ring is good and flat, because if you don't get a good seal, then you got a possibility of an emissions code and check engine light because the tank's not sealed up properly. Once we get it up, about this level, we can plug in an electrical connector. On the fuel lines, when you get ready to install them, you need to be sure that you physically hear and feel them lock into place. Also, when you're raising the tank, you need to be sure that you don't get them pinched against the frame or kinked in any way so that you don't compromise the line itself. We'll attach the negative battery terminal. Once the pump's installed, with your pressure gauge still in the vehicle, cycle the key 2 to 3 times. That charges the fuel system, purges any air out of the system so it starts quickly. Go ahead and start the vehicle, check your pressure gauge to make sure it's within vehicle specs. To remove the gauge, we'll shut the engine off and bleed the pressure from the system using the pressure relief on the gauge, making sure to capture any fuel in a safe container.